We are all, to varying degrees, driven to succeed. How and what that looks like is, of course, highly individual and personal. Capricorn is the pinnacle, the peak of human achievement, the crowning glory of our life's work. Hey there, Truth Seeker. Welcome to the Star Kittens community where we discuss 13th sign astrology. Are you in alignment with your divine design? Do you want to master the metaphysical reality? Open the doors of perception. Each planetary body is an archetype, a template, if you will, that helps us interpret human behavior in the world around us. The more awake and aware we are, the more synchronicity will show up in your life. Our focus today is the Capricorn full moon and the T-square involving the Sun in Cancer with Juno and Vesta in Libra. To help us reach more souls with this important message, please like, share and subscribe. There's a lot going on, so let's jump in. Kia ora, David.
Kia ora.
How is it August already? And of course, in August, there are so many people that talk about this Lion's Gate. But fun fact, the sun does not move into Leo until the 11th of August. So during 8/8, the sun is in Cancer. Just one of those beautiful things that is the difference between the 12th and the 13th sign astrology. But today we are going to talk about the full moon in Capricorn. So of course the sun is still in Cancer and the moon sits in Capricorn during this period. So what would you like to tease us with, David?
These readings involving Capricorn and the moon are very simple in a sense. So mastering meditation and mindfulness, I think, is the key to this lunation. Capricorn represents, as you've said, the pinnacle of human achievement in the material world. We are talking here about legacy, about discipline, patience, and perseverance that's required in any material pursuit. The Capricorn spirit animal, which is well known, is the goat, which embodies resilience and adaptability are two of its characteristics. The moon, in this context, represents our emotional connection to success, prosperity, and abundance. Vesta symbolizes our inner flame, our connection to the divine quintessence. Juno is the archetype of the twin flame, the fated or soulmate type relationships. And we haven't spoken a lot about Juno before either, but we get a chance to do so today. Libra, of course, is about balance and equilibrium. Cancer Sun speaks primarily to our immediate family and home life. And like our prior podcast, this one is practical, grounded in the here and now.
Tangible things to move forward. I like that. So that's a good way to start. So how do we really get hold of that Capricorn energy during this full moon?
Yeah, as I touched on, the goat archetype is the one associated with Capricorn. And that's a multifaceted symbol. It has diverse interpretations across many different cultures and contexts. Goats, particularly mountain goats, and I pass one sometimes when I'm going for a walk. They're known for their agility and their ability to climb very steep slopes, often rocky slopes and outcrops. And this has come in human terms to symbolize the capacity to overcome obstacles and achieve our goals, which are very much Capricornian qualities. Capricorn, of course, is the third in the Earth trilogy, the first being Taurus, the second being Virgo. So therefore, as the peak or the pinnacle of that trilogy, Capricorn represents our journey through the material realm, how we manifest and manage resources in Taurus, how we earn an income and go about our day-to-day work, which is that Virgo energy, and how we function physically, of course, is the earth, So health and well-being is also a part of this. And of course, how do we define and pursue success in worldly terms? That is all wrapped up in this Capricorn archetype. As the last of the temporal houses, going from 1 to 10, of course, there's house 11 and house 12, but as the last of those kind of earth-based houses in the astrological mosaic, Capricorn therefore represents the end of the road in a sense, and it's the highest part of the astrological chart, which therefore relates to our reputation in the human collective, like how are we seen in the public domain? What is the legacy that we leave? And to what extent have we managed and mastered the challenges and difficulties that inevitably and invariably present themselves as we're living on the material plane and pursuing material success? Capricorn represents at the most deepest level our drives and our desires, what propels us forward. And I've spoken of this before, but not always is there an astrological reference back to the tarot, but certainly the tarot card for Capricorn is long and considered to be the devil, and it's just so rich and full of symbolism that I thought I'd touch on it once again here. Capricorn, of course, is represented by the powerful and determined mountain goat, which I've touched on, which is that strong-willed and ambitious energy. Capricorn energy is considered to be that of the business person of the zodiac. So therefore, Capricorn, and we all have a Capricorn house, of course, taps into our pursuit of excellence and our achievement orientation. Capricorn is fundamentally then about leadership, it's about status, it's about material awards and recognition. The card in the tarot, and you can put it up on the screen for us, for those that are watching, as does the sign of Libra, warns about us becoming enslaved to our goals as we pursue material success, abundance, wealth, security. We need to always be reminded that it can come at a cost. When we look at that tarot card, the tail of the male is on fire, and that represents the danger of being inflamed by desire and ultimately overtaken by it. While the tail of the female in that tarot card, the devil card, this Capricorn card, is a bunch of grapes, which symbolizes the risks of drunkenness and debauchery, depravity, and overindulgence. Of course, many people, when they're highly successful, do, of course, drink and overindulge, and therefore that's what the grapes represents. The chains in that card represent the risk of enslavement and being enslaved to consumption and competition and vice. Of course, everyone knows when they look closely at those chains on that Capricorn card that they can be loosened and that the man and the woman are not actually chained at all. They just look like they are. And of course, you have this creature, this goat-like creature, which has been assigned many, many different names: Lucifer, Satan, and others. There are other names. But that creature sits on top of a black box. And here is the connection between Capricorn and Cancer. Because in this context of the tarot and in astrology as well, the black box symbolizes staring into the abyss, which means to contemplate profound, unsettling, or even dangerous truths that are often related to existential questions, such as the nature of reality or the potential for human evil. Therefore, part of the Capricorn quest, everyone understands the materialism and the earth side, the ambition, the quest for success. That side of it is well understood. But another part of this Capricornian energy that we all deal with, it refers to a deep and prolonged focus on something that can be psychologically challenging or even overwhelming. The phrase staring into the abyss, popularized by Friedrich Nietzsche, suggests that such contemplation can be contemplative, potentially leading to either profound insight or descent into darkness. When Capricorn is paired with the moon and Cancer, and we look at the moon card, we can see this concept of staring into the abyss. So just to step back from a moment, we've reached the heights of material success, or we're absolutely focused on that. And suddenly we realize there's more to life. and we start staring into the abyss. We start asking these profound questions like, what does it all mean? And why am I doing this? And why am I here? And so on and so forth. This is what we're talking about. So there's a tipping point with materialism tipping into spiritualism and deep questioning of what exactly it is that we are doing when we pursue the security and the material success. And so the moon card plays its role here as the opposition to Capricorn. And in the moon, when we're staring into the abyss, there are things that can happen. Of course, staring into the abyss, just to remind us, is about asking existential questions. Primarily, what is this about? What is life about? What is our roots? Where do we come from? What is our role in this vast universe that we live in? So as we're contemplating that, and we can see in that tarot card for the moon, we see a crayfish emerging from the water of unconsciousness. And what that crayfish represents is that first stage of awareness. The dog in that card, the moon card, which is opposite Capricorn, is the controlled mind. And the wolf howling at the moon represents losing our mind, which occurs when we focus only on materialism and we forget everything else.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that you are able to just give those linkages because we all learn different. And I think by just having different pieces of the puzzle, we're able to hopefully all get a better understanding of how we can use these energies. So I never made that link between the black box of the devil card with staring into the abyss and what is the point? You know, we hear these sayings of money isn't everything, but everyone strives for that more materialism. And when you have your mortgage-free house and the two new cars on the driveway, how are you inside? How are you dealing with perhaps the heartbreak of not seeing a sibling or never talked it out with your deceased parent or grandparent? Then does it really matter that you have two cars in the driveway? It's those, again, we are a spirit being having a human experience and going inwards to what really matters. And that's a difficult road to take at times. I speak from experience. So of course, the moon is in Capricorn and the sun is in Cancer. And Cancer is the fourth house, lineage and roots, and the guardian of Cancer is the moon. So how is this energetic sun energy playing out during this Cancer time?
The first thing I'd say is the masculine and the feminine polarities are reversed here. Of course, if you think about that, if the moon is in Capricorn, which is a masculine sign, and the sun of masculine sign is in the feminine sign of Cancer. So we have a reversed polarity. So that's the first issue to touch on, which means that this is actually, in a sense, a disruptive place in the traditional view of Capricorn Cancer for the sun to be, because the moon is opposite. Because generally people assign the moon to the feminine and the sun to the masculine. But in this case, we have this masculine influence in the moon sign. And in the context of ambition and pursuit and success, of course, we've talked about Capricorn being that pathway to the top of the mountain, if you like, the king of the hill, queen of the hill, keeping up with the Joneses, all of that sort of stuff, which in different parts of the world means different things. Of course, in the West, we have very much a focus, you mentioned about buying a house or at least having a house to live in. And that's a big part of the way that we operate in the West, and driving a car in suburban settings and often driving to work and so on and so forth, kids to sports and going to the supermarket. But in big parts of the world, that doesn't exist. So those realities are not real for them. They're only real for us in the West. So I do put that caveat on this. So therefore, material success for somebody who is not in the West may be completely differently defined. But the Cancer sun here also represents, when we're talking about ambition and pursuit of worldly success, that drive for achievement, that Capricorn energy. Cancer Sun asks, what price are we paying in terms of specifically our family and our home life? What is the emotional toll or cost of Capricorn success? These are the types of staring into the abyss questions, right? To what extent are we emotionally nourished by our family and our home life? And conversely, to what extent are we nourishing our family and our home life with material success? So it's a virtuous cycle. The support of family and home life can help us be successful, but equally being successful can help our home life and our family as well. So that goes both ways. Are we enjoying the fruits of our labor? Are we taking time to reflect and to reset occasionally? You see, we've heard that expression, we do a deal with the devil, and the only way for fame and success is to do a deal with the devil. I've heard that many times. In fact, I was watching a documentary the other day, and some will know the name Shane Warne as the famous cricketer, but it was on him, and it was done just before he died. The timing was remarkable. But there was something he said in there, and it was exactly dealing with this Cancer Capricorn energy insofar as he had 3 kids, but he spent 9 months of the year away from his children pursuing cricket. But of course, he got to the top of he became one of the most famous and well-known cricketers ever to play the game. But he said, when he was asked about his family, he said that there was a price to pay and that his wife and his kids understood that the price that he paid was that he would be away for 9 months of the year and that he wouldn't get to see them. But eventually it all caught up and he got to a point where he's like, I need to spend time with my kids and I need to spend time at home. So there's a fine balance here. And of course, that's the Libra energy that's sort of permeating this whole uh, full moon. So this deal with the devil, what does it mean? And what shall it profit a man or a woman if he or she should gain the whole world but lose their soul?
Yeah. Yep. And that's where that Capricorn image is just coming back to me as well. But as you say, they're able to take that chain off and perhaps stare into the abyss and think, what is more important right now? So for those listening, we'll put it on the screen, but I'll just say that during this full moon, the moon sits at 16 degrees Capricorn, the sun sits at 18 degrees Cancer. And the other 2 planetary bodies that we're talking about are Juno and Vesta sitting at 7 degrees Libra and Juno at 10 degrees Libra. And they're making that geometric shape of a triangle with Vesta and Juno at the top. So let's talk about Juno first, David.
Yep. And so that T square, as you've just said, that triangle with the Vesta and Juno at the top means that the pinnacle or focus of that T square, so the moon and the sun are the other sides of that triangle. Both the moon and the sun, if you like, are pointing towards Vesta and Juno. So therefore they play a very important role here in giving an interpretation of this full moon. But the Libra square Juno on there's one aspect of it, and we'll touch on Vesta in a moment. But if Venus is what we desire and want in a partner, so this is in the context of relationships, right? If Venus is what we desire and want, then Juno is what we need in a deep, committed Libra relationship to evolve and progress. In terms of home life, and I've touched on that before, Juno represents those values and virtues that the other person brings to us. And I wouldn't, it's the old paradigm. Of course, we were talking about that earlier with our dad's generation that born in 1939, and their expectation generationally was that they would be the breadwinner and the wife would stay at home, look after the kids, and make the house. But of course, all of that's been tipped on its head, where there are plenty of females these days who are the primary breadwinner. So Juno represents those qualities, those virtues and values in that committed relationship, in this context of that really help that to bubble along and just move and flow. That type of relationship supports one or the other's success. Juno relationships, as opposed to Venus type relationships, are profoundly transformative on a soul level. These Juno relationships, and often when we're doing an interpretation or a chart reading, a lot of people are focused on relationships. Of course, the seventh house is where you find some intelligence on that, or some insights on that, if you like. But the most interesting place to look for, especially somebody who's either in a committed relationship or is looking for one, is where is the Juno placement? Because that gives the person who's having a reading done, or in this case, us interpreting this, it provides us with a pretty clear understanding that we're talking here about these deep committed relationships in the context of pursuit of material wealth and success and home life. What part does a deep committed relationship play? So these Juno relationships can feel fated. They can feel like soulmate. They've got these various names assigned to them. Twin flame, we call ours a twin flame relationship. But these are unions that have a sense of destiny about them. Juno and Libra, therefore, is about partnering with your equal, where the power between the two partners is balanced. The shadow sign of Juno Libra is square to Capricorn Cancer. So let's talk about if it's not going so well, is coercion and manipulation within a relationship. Power struggles, passive aggressive tendencies from one or both partners towards one another, unforgiveness, bitterness, obstinance, digging in, that sort of thing. These are behaviors that can manifest in relationships where one person feels like I'm looking after playing the role of I'm looking after the home, and one person's playing the role of being the breadwinner. This is where some of the stuff can come out. One partner can feel often unheard, subjugated, suppressed, diminished even, because homemaking isn't materially rewarded in the same way as being in the business world. It's very hard often, and you can talk about this. I'm sure you'll have something to say about this shortly. But it's very hard to put a number on it. And therefore, in many ways, people get this misunderstanding about, well, the breadwinner's bringing in X amount of money and is paying the mortgage or is doing this and doing that. But the other partner, and as I said, it's not always the wife or the woman, it could be the man as well. I've got a friend who's in that situation where his wife was the primary breadwinner and he was the homemaker. And these profound issues of value do come up within these Juno type relationships. So that's what we're referring to here, is where one partner feels that they're not quite equal because they're not bringing in the money, for example, but they might be raising fantastic kids or just providing an incredibly supportive home life as well. But the light, so that's the shadow side, is these power struggles and this imbalance, emotional imbalance. But the light and expansive side of a Juno relationship in the context of home life and success and career and pursuing materialism is that it can be incredibly supportive. It can help us to expand. And a committed relationship can meaningfully contribute to our success. We can be emotionally engaged and resonant with another person, and that also within that context, the pathway to resolve conflict is effective and it's supportive and it's agreed to. Those communication channels are open when things don't go right. The emotions flow in harmony in these Juno relationships, Juno Libra relationships, where there is home life on the one side, Cancer, and career and worldly pursuit on the other, Capricorn. In a Juno relationship, we will see ourselves in the mirror of another. And where those who are in these relationships will know exactly what I'm talking about, and those who are pursuing that for themselves, always make sure that where there's work and home life and there's a potential conflict between the two, that you have really open paths of communication and that you can talk about your feelings, because that feeling of, I feel like you're getting ahead, you're doing better than I am, or particularly where one partner uh, feels like their career is being put on hold. I mean, I've heard of and seen up close and personal that type of dynamic as well. So all of these things I'm touching on come into this whole Juno and Libra in a square to Capricorn and Cancer at this full moon.
Being a parent is the hardest and most fulfilling job in quotations on the planet. And it's beautiful to watch my children grow and explore the world and see, like I took my son on a ride on one of the fairs here a couple of weeks ago, and his expression as he went through the air, it was priceless. And I'm so happy that I recorded it, because you can't, he experienced that for the first time, or seeing a dolphin jump out of the water for the first time. You know, it's those moments that we cling to as a parent, as a guardian of these young souls. But it's the moments where you've asked your daughter for the millionth time to tidy her room, and all you get back is screaming in your face, like, no, I just want to go to the neighbors. And there's no thank you for dinner. And you just do load of after load of washing that you're like, why am I doing this? And when you then don't have a partner who supports you, who sees you for the person that you are, yeah, that's tough. I love being able to provide a nourishing home for my family, and I love being able to provide beautiful meals and mowing the lawn. I love just that home life, and I take my head off to all those parents that are doing the best that they can for their children and making them a good human, because it is tough, especially nowadays with so many influences coming at them that you don't have any control over. Back in the day, when I was young, when you were young, David, your parents could kind of go, okay, so you can see us, your parents, your siblings, maybe some uncles and aunties that will influence, shape you to be a person. Some friends at school, you could say you can go to this school or that school, to a religious institution. And that was kind of it. You could say, okay, a team sport or not. But nowadays, children are bombarded with TV shows that will have underlying messages, all these advertisements, the social media. Thank goodness my children are young enough that I haven't fallen into that trap yet. But you have less and less control now as a parent. So for those conscious parents out there, you are doing an amazing, let's call it job again, in quotations marks. And let's just make sure that we tell ourselves in the mirror, I'm doing the best that I can with the tools that I have at the moment. So thank you, David, for just highlighting that. I think it's really important that more and more people will understand that it is a tough gig, but seeing those firsts in my children and the laughs that we have, it is all worth it. So we've spoken about Juno, and the other one that's really close and also close to my heart is Vesta. So how is this Vesta energy helping or bringing this energy a more tension into it?
Yeah, and of course, the Vesta energy relates very closely to the moon energies, the introspective energies, and the staring into the abyss, that question of existentialism and what's this all about and what is the meaning of life and so on and so forth, that occurs to us at different points along the journey. And often we don't get to think about those things until we've achieved or ticked off the level of success that we hold in our hearts or hold in our minds. And sometimes those, those levels, if you like, if I can use that way of describing it, the level of success is often just a mirror reflection of, and you touched on those relationships that we have as children, but it's fairly well documented and known these days that the level of success that a child has will be determined by, to some extent, the level of success of the mother or the father or both, and often, uh, if you have a highly successful parent, either one or both, and I'm talking in this context specifically in the workplace, um, then it's not unusual to see a child want to do that as well because they think that that's the path. And that's where uh, this dynamic becomes very interesting because for others, the Libra square Vesta energy is about a different type of power, if you like, that comes from introspection, that comes from tapping into our inner drives and really knowing what it is that makes us tick. So when we look at the Vesta archetype and we look at the history and the mythology of Vesta, we see that the Vestal virgins, as they were called, were highly revered in the Roman pantheon. And in that, insofar as the Roman patriarchal system held, we've talked about there was two or three deities, female deities that were held in very high regard. Venus was one, Vesta was another, Juno was another as well, and Pallas Athena. There were a few of them, and they were so elevated in the consciousness of the Roman pantheon that this is why it's worthwhile just focusing for a moment on what does Vesta actually mean as an astrological archetype. So firstly, we know that the Vestal or the Vesta energies were highly revered and highly regarded. But why? And what are these energies? The stories go that in the Roman in the Colosseum and in the cities, there was a temple where there was a fire burning, and this fire represented the basically the life force of the Roman Empire. And these Vestal virgins were their job was to be in these temples and to protect that flame from going out at all costs. And of course, because they did that, if symbolically, if the flame was ever allowed to be extinguished, that would represent the end of the empire. And so the flame was always burning. And it's interesting that that whole idea of the flame burning comes up with the Olympics. When there's, and I think it's, what is it, 3 or 4 or 5 months before an Olympic Games, there's a flame that gets passed around the whole world. That flame never goes out. That's part of this sort of symbolism of fire and always burning fire. And what does it mean for us as individuals? The flame represents the inner fire of creativity, and it's our inner fires of intuition, and it's our divine connection. So therefore, with the square to both Cancer and Capricorn, and also the conjunction, of course, with Juno, this is about encouraging us to nourish and develop our inner fires of creativity and intuition and divine creation, and to develop virtue. And it is virtue that allows us to be balanced. So often, a person without virtue who accumulates a lot of money or wealth can be very destructive. But a person with virtue who's accumulated money and wealth and success can be incredibly supportive of those around them and can build a legacy that will be remembered often for generations. But in the end, creativity and the ability to create anything, including material success in the pursuit of Capricorn's ambition, the road to the top of the mountain, this requires creativity and it requires intuition. And ultimately, it requires divine connection for us to stay grounded, for us to keep our heads when material success can go to people in ways that we can't even imagine. They can lose themselves in it. So the antidote to that losing yourself in the material world is to focus on the Vestal fire, the fires of creation that are within us. And the only way to access them is to go inside our inner temple and to protect that fire, that virtue, that connection to the divine with everything that we've got. The way that we access that is mentally, obviously, but the primary way that we access the inner fire is through meditation and mindfulness, through introspection and reflection. And that fire and Vesta, therefore, reminds us of the cyclical nature of life itself, that sometimes there's a time to expand, but other times there's a time to contract.
Mm. In creativity, it's not just in painting or sculpting or anything like that. Creativity can be in data research and using your creative mind to understand the numbers on the screen. It can be in the kitchen. It can be making a beautiful garden. It's something that comes from your being and sharing it with. And so I am not a drawer or a painter. I haven't not developed that skill, but I am very creative in other ways. So don't let something hold you back. Just there are many intuitive people. You can find them on YouTube or other podcasts that keep sending this message of do what brings you joy. And that is such a key to this life is something that brings you joy will have such a massive ripple into the field. And so whatever joy that is, it is a way of creating something. So that would be my parting message today. Use this energy from Vesta, connect with that Juno energy. If you found your twin flame in this lifetime, yay for you. It is a beautiful energy to be in. And then, of course, the Capricorn and the Cancer energy, and use this time to create and send a beautiful positive ripple into the field. What is your parting message, David?
Well, I don't have anything really to add to that. I mean, you've just summarized it. You know, the Capricorn Cancer energies, as I mentioned before, they're reversed, the masculine and the feminine. But the key message of Libra is balance. So whatever it is, you know, when you're talking about doing it with joy and operating with joy and functioning from joy, the joy is in the accumulation and the success. I mean, it is a good feeling to achieve. But if it comes at the cost of your family, or it comes at the cost of, there's an emotional toll to it, then the question is, was it worth it? But we can only answer that for ourselves. There's no standard here. We don't know from one person to the next what the level of ambition and drive and desire they have. For some, it's apparently massive, like a Shane Warne or a Tiger Woods or a Novak Djokovic. Clearly, Michael Jordan, right? Clearly, these individuals were highly driven, but we will never know behind the scenes the cost for them emotionally in terms of their family and their home lives. And this is not about a judgment. It's just simply about raising the question. The Cancer question in relationship to Capricorn says, what's the cost in terms of your family and in terms of your home life and in terms of your emotional energies, if you like. If you're so depleted at the end of the day, but you've accumulated this huge pile of money and abundance and rewards and trinkets and success, but you draw no joy from it,
Mm.
what was the point? And equally, Remember to celebrate your successes. Remember that it's fun to accumulate. It's fun to succeed. It's fun to hit the winning goal. It's fun to do those things. And celebrate it as much as we talk about the other side. It's also about the emotional nourishment that comes from, I did that. I feel good about it. That's a legacy. It leaves an example for somebody else, particularly if you're a parent. You see, your kids want to see that because you want them to mirror it ultimately. And in a relationship, surely you would want to see that mirrored back to you. And that's where the balance comes in. Because if the other one is not recognizing your success, then there's an imbalance in that relationship. So there's a number of different threads to pull here, all of which are as valid and as important as the other. There's no priority, but they're all important.
Thank you. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please check out our other episodes, which you can find on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Audible Podcast, and YouTube. Flick us a message if you are interested in a personalized chat or a natal reading. We enjoy sharing our knowledge with you. So thank you, David. Ngā mihi.
Namaste.
Until next time.